Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today for Thursdays with AARP Wisconsin. I am Amber Miller, Associate State Director with AARP Wisconsin, and we're very excited for you to be here today. Before we get to our guest speaker, I would like to just make a couple updates. One is if you're interested in attending any of our online workshops that are coming up, you can find those at aarp.org/Wisconsin. We have a lot of good upcoming workshops, conversations, bingo, trivia, so you can find that all there. We also have a program called AARP Community Connections, and this you can log on to find volunteer opportunities in your local area to help your neighbor or a friendly voice. This is a program that can that you put a request in for a friendly volunteer, one of our AARP volunteers, to call you. It could be on a daily basis, a weekly basis, but it's all about just hearing that friendly voice. Another update I would like to share with you is our Small Dollar Big Impact Grant. This is through AARP Wisconsin. It's a new grant program that we launched about a month ago, and it's exactly what it sounds like, small dollar, big impact. If you know of an organization, a nonprofit, or other entities that would be interested in applying for this small grant, which is up to $1,000, they can head to our website under Small Dollar Big Impact, and which is also below. And the next proposals will be due July 20th. So now I would love to introduce you to our guest speaker, and her name, beautiful, Miss Wonderful, Helen Marks Dicks, who is our State Issues Advocacy Director with AARP Wisconsin, and we're excited to have her back. We had her on a couple weeks ago, but today Helen's going to be talking about something new, and it's all about the governor's task force and the survey that came out. So hello, Helen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, and as you know, I have a passion for representing caregivers, so this is the Governor's Task Force on Caregiving.
Yes.
And I have lots to share.
Great. No, we're glad that you're here again. I know this is really important. So why is the Governor's Task Force on Caregiving seeking input with this survey for folks who are not aware of it?
Well, what we have done up to this point is the task force has a lot of people on it that represent various aspects of the caregiving, both for paid and unpaid workers, family caregivers, and the professionals. And so we wanted to test the ideas that we came up with to see if they were really helpful for people and to make sure we weren't overlooking anything. So this is our opportunity before we finalize our recommendations to the governor to give people who are actually caregivers, give people who actually use these services a chance to weigh in and see that we didn't overlook anything and that our ideas are sound and not just some, backroom idea that somebody has that really doesn't help people.
And I can see that your roommate also wants to be on camera, so we're happy to have her.
Well, she loves Zoom meetings.
Absolutely. And then, so if anybody has questions, we'll be taking questions along the way. So you could put them below. So please post your questions if you have any comments or suggestions or questions along the way. So Helen, is this survey just for family caregivers or is it for professional caregivers?
It's the entire care force. We're looking at caregiving both for professional caregivers, for the providers of service, for the family members who do all the volunteer work. And some proposals include both groups and some are just geared towards one or the other.
Okay,
but
great.
We have to work together. It's a very strong network between the two groups.
Absolutely. Are we going to cover all the proposals that the task force is reviewing or just some of them today?
Well, Amber, you do limit me in time because I could go on and on forever.
Yeah.
So what I have done is I'm going to walk people through the survey, but I'm going to highlight the ones that AARP in particular has been working on. So I'm going to look at some of the family caregivers Then I'm going to look at one proposal that affects both, and then I'm going to look at the general comment section.
Okay.
But if you're interested in things, scopes beyond what I talk about, you'll have plenty of opportunity to go into the survey and comment on any of the proposals.
Great. And I do know the link to the survey is scrolling on
It is scrolling
bottom.
below.
So we're going, yes, and we're going to be going into the survey in just a couple seconds. But when you are looking to fill out your own survey, the website below is what you will click on. Okay,
So,
Helen.
So the survey starts just the way you would expect it to start. If you go to this caregiver page, you can find a long explanation of all the proposals. You really don't need that unless you want to look at it. But I'm going to take people directly to the survey and walk through filling out the survey. And so you start with really the basic. They end up asking you who you are. So the first checkbox that you fill out is, for us, most of us, it's going to be caregiver or family member or concerned community member. You can be either. You can be an advocate, but you are somebody who has an opinion on this or some experience. If you scroll down a little further, you can see that they want the ethnic and background information stuff. So we're going to check white because we're going to pretend I'm filling out the survey. And below, we're going to say urban because I live in an urban area. And then you just check next. So they have a long list of all the things that you can comment on because there are 15 proposals. But I'm going to take you through. We check some to get ready for this. We're going to do the Family Medical Leave Act amendments. We're going to do the Aging and Disability Resource Center reinvestment. We're going to look at the credit for caring, which is better known as the caregiver tax credit. We're going to look at the CARE Act. And then we're going to scroll down a little. We're going to do the Medicaid expansion on benefits. And then we're going to go to the very end because there's a general comment section that I'd like you to understand how to use if you want it. And then you just simply hit the next button. Now, we're going to start with the Family Medical Leave Act. And I'm going to recommend people support this. And I'll tell you what it does. You could look at, if you see the view proposal summary just before the question, if you click there, it gives you a little paragraph showing exactly what the proposal is. In this case, what it is it changes the Family Medical Leave Act to expand it a little so that it covers grandchildren, it covers siblings, it covers care meetings, it covers caregiving, it covers some things that currently aren't covered by the Family Medical Leave Act, which would help caregivers get to discharge meetings. It would help them get to various places where they would be able to fulfill their caregiving duties. So now if you scroll down a little after you check that you strongly support it, how can it be improved? Well, we had some debate on this committee. Our proposal doesn't put any money behind it or any insurance. It just expands who can use the Family Medical Leave Act. However, if you feel strongly it should be paid, then you should say something if there's some insurance. If you're a small business owner, you can say that you really support this, but you don't want any additional expenses, so you could expand coverage without going ahead and making it more expensive for small business. Whatever comment you want to put in, I'm encouraging people to do this, to support this. And then you hit next. Now, once again, this is a proposal. It's called the Wisconsin Credit for Caring Act. And what happens is family caregivers, and I think Amber and I have talked about this on another show, but family caregivers are spending on an average of $7,000 a year out of their own pocket to take care of loved ones. So this was an attempt to help relieve that a little. The way the proposal is written, it gives a $1,000 tax credit for people who spend $2,000 in certain qualified expenses like medication, equipment, home modifications. You have to have certain types of expenditures. And that would be a tax credit. It's not a refundable tax credit. It's a tax credit for money actually spent and a credit against money that you would owe the government. So once again, this is something I urge people to really support. You know, it helps taxpayers too to keep people at home and not on government programs. And once again, there's an opportunity to comment. And if you're somebody who's spending money out of your own pocket, helping keep your parents at home or supporting a disabled child, or in some way making life easier for people to stay at home, then you could make a comment in there about why this proposal is important to you.
Great.
So this is the CARE Act. The CARE Act, of course, is also something we strongly support. And the CARE Act is really quite simple. It says when you go into a hospital, and I'm going to put Amber in the hospital, and I'm going to say, Amber, you go in the hospital, who's your caregiver? And she's going to say, Helen's going to be my caregiver. She'll come and pick me up from the hospital, and then she'll go home and stay with me and take care of me. Well, that all works very well. But what if Amber gets discharged and she has a wound, or she has some equipment she has to use or something? I need to be trained. I am not by nature or training a nurse or a caregiver. And so it's really important. This was really brought that the person be trained by the hospital before they're discharged. The other requirement of the law is that they tell you when they're going to be discharged. That you can't, if you have a designated caregiver, Amber can't all of a sudden disappear and go from Freighter to, you know, the little home under the elms in Elmbrook without me knowing about it. So this was really brought home to me pretty severely because a friend of mine had some surgery recently and she needed to have wound care. And of course, I cheerfully avoided it because I'm her lawyer friend. I'm not her nurse friend. Well, she's lucky she had a nurse friend who was doing the caregiving and doing the wound packing. But then there was a little thing called a trip. And it's like, we can't go on the trip unless you learn to do wound care. I was very thankful that I had a nurse who would train me on this. But many caregivers leave the hospital with their loved one with a set of written instructions and no idea of what to do with it. So this is really important that caregivers get the confidence and the skills that they need to take care of things. Correct. And that they go ahead and get the training.
I find that this one particularly interesting. I learned a couple things, but to take on that as a caregiver, people might not realize that there's more to it than I'm just going to pick you up from the hospital and drop you off at home. So I appreciate the explanation on that, and that people really should definitely strongly, support that. So that's great.
Well, Amber, it turns out that 49% of people are actually caregivers, family caregivers are actually doing medical chores. And, home dialysis, feeding tubes, all kinds of things that are not the sort of thing that you're thinking of taking on when you take mom to the hospital and
Correct.
Gets discharged. So
absolutely,
I really encourage people to support this one.
Yeah.
So, Medicaid expansion. I have to look at my notes a minute. I think we might have skipped one. Oh, no, we're fine. Medicaid expansion. I support Medicaid expansion. Let me tell you why Medicaid expansion is important to AARP and the caregivers. This affects probably the paid care force more than family caregivers. But the reason it's so important is we have a lot of people who are working as paid caregivers who make very little in wages. And besides making very little in wages, they do not receive benefits, including health care from their employer. So many of the people who we are relying on to take care of our loved ones in institutions or by providing home services or visitations of some kind, don't have insurance except through Medicaid. The trouble with having a lower Medicaid rate level, is that people actually, rather than lose their insurance, sometimes limit the amount of hours they work because they live in fear of losing their insurance for themselves and their children. So what happens here is we're really looking to expand the Medicaid expansion to a higher percentage, so more of the healthcare workers would be eligible to have insurance. Even if their pay is not improved, this would improve their compensation in the sense it would allow them to work more hours, be more available for extra hours, and not risk their benefit, having health insurance. But there's another part of it too. Many family caregivers end up reducing their hours of work. And they reduce the hours of work because they're needed at home. Some people need to have somebody with them at all times. And so maybe the family divides it up. So maybe you take someone who has a full-time job and they go part-time, and then other members of the family supplement it. Well, some of those people would reduce their income in such a way that they would lose their employer benefits if they had them. And so that also having the expansion would help the people that are doing the caregiving. And most of all, last but not least, let's not forget the care recipient who also might be eligible if we expanded the top level of poverty. If we go to 138% of poverty.
Sure.
So I encourage, this impacts a lot of people, and I think it would be really quite good.
If after somebody puts in their survey and press submit, so what happens to our input? What happens to our survey?
What happens to our survey is those of us who have worked on these various proposals are going to look and see what kind of input we got. And we have to finalize our proposals. And we want to hear what we forgot, what we overlooked, what we should be considering, and what kind of public support we have. Because even when we make our recommendations, they go to the governor, they still have to go through the legislative process. So it would be nice to gauge how much support we have for some of these ideas.
And what is the due date for this survey, Helen?
It's July 14th, which is next Tuesday.
Okay, great.
If I shouldn't say that because I know we're doing this live and then you're going to rebroadcast me. But it's Tuesday, July 14th.
Beautiful. And we do have a question that we will bring up from Jim. So can you explain some of the tasks a family caregiver performs and what support they need in order to continue their great work?
Well, family caregivers do almost everything. They do medication management. They take people to visits. They clean and feed people through the pegs that people do nutritional feeding through. They maintain and support people getting oxygen. They, some people do home modifications. And sometimes just turn a person in bed regularly so that you don't get wounds and eventually have to deal with more wound care. So people are doing a lot of that stuff. Two things that can help them a lot is one is the good training that we're trying to get through the CARE Act. And the other thing that they could do is they're spending a lot of money. So if we could give them a little relief through the credit for caring, I think it would go a long way towards helping them.
And with the survey, Helen, is it a yearly survey? Is this the first time they've ever done it? If you have a little history.
Well, I think pardon me, it's the first time we've ever had a caregiver task force. And so this is the attempt. Normally, if we weren't in the pandemic, we would probably have had a public hearing.
Oh, sure.
So we couldn't do a public hearing. We did a little bit of a Zoom hearing, but this was an attempt to reach more people who weren't comfortable with Zoom, who gives a chance for us to make sure we're not overlooking something. Whether the task force continues beyond this fall is not known yet.
Okay.
But this will definitely influence our recommendations that we make to the governor in the fall.
Great. And as Helen said, and as we just went through the survey, the website is below scrolling. If you type in this website, it will take you to the survey that Helen just went over and the importance of making sure that your voice is heard. Helen, do you have any final comments that you would like to give?
More.
Okay, love it.
I have two more I want to do here.
Yes, absolutely.
One is about the Aging and Disability Resource Centers. And I'm always distressed that people don't know more about the Aging and Disability Resource Centers. What they are, every county is covered by an Aging and Disability Resource Center, and they help older people and people with disabilities, regardless of income, with important issues like finding long-term care, applying for public benefits, using food share, knowing where pro bono services are in the community. It is a one-stop shop wonder. And if you just call up and start with your ADRC, no matter what your problem is, they will send you in the right direction. Now, ADRCs have been around for a while, and like every other government service, they need more money. But they're also the group that runs the caregiver support system in this state. And so we are looking to give them more money. Currently, most of the caregiver support programs are for people 60 and older. And this proposal would expand it to include younger people over age 18, so that the caregiver doesn't have to be an older person. And it would also put more money into respite and to services that would actually help people. So this proposal is something we support strongly. And I wish, and some money in there is for marketing, so more people know about the ADRCs and the caregiving program, so they can actually access them. Biggest problem is a person becomes a caregiver and they don't know any of this.
Correct. And the ADRCs are statewide.
Oh, there is one in every county. Some of them have what they call dementia care specialists that particularly help people and do education on people with various forms of dementia. They're a wonderful resource. And if you never know where to start, I don't know how many calls I get every year as an advocacy person for AARP and how many people I send to the ADRCs. They're a wonderful resource.
They definitely are.
And the last one that I have out there is kind of what I call the catch-all. This is a place where additional comments can be put in. And I think this is kind of important because sometimes we overlook something, or sometimes you have a unique experience and you don't know what box to put it in. This is the box to put it in. If there's something you want the caregiver task force to know about or think about when they're making their recommendations, this is the place to put it in. So I seem to have lost Amber, who's interviewing me. So
no, I'm right here. I'm right here. Yeah, I'm just a click away, Helen. So what's great about the survey is a lot of folks, they ask how can our voice be heard, and especially when it comes to caregiving. And I feel like this right here is a prime example of just one of the ways that people can be heard.
It is important. And, I've done advocacy for a long time, so it's very interesting to be on the receiving end.
Correct.
And it reminds me that your individual stories and the one-on-one testimony and the number of people who fill it out, and even if you agree with everything, just writing in saying, I could use this program. I've gotten comments from people saying, too late, I could have used this.
Correct.
It's very important that we know what caregivers really want.
And can you give just a little bit of history, if you don't mind, for the folks who might not be aware of this task force, how the task force came about?
Well, we've been petitioning for a long time, those of us who have been advocating for legislative improvement for caregivers. And there's been a paid caregiver crisis for quite a couple of years now. So we have been repeatedly petitioning the governor for the last 4 or 5 years to have a task force to look at this, because it is really getting to be a crisis to have enough workers. And the pandemic has really highlighted what a crisis we are having. So this governor, early in the year, Governor Evers asked for people who might be interested. He was going to declare a task force, and he did. He asked for applications. Over 300 people applied to be on this task force. It was a very strong showing. I was fortunate enough to be picked as one of the people. It's because AARP reaches so many members. And so, and our charge is to make recommendations for the next budget cycle. And as I said, there's some question as to whether we're just hitting the top layer of problems here and we might continue for another year, but we'll find out in the fall.
Great.
But citizen input is so important. And so please fill out the survey. Please tell us if we missed something. Please tell us what you need to make your life easier. And please support both the paid and the unpaid family caregivers. They're pretty essential.
Absolutely. And we will double check the link that's scrolling at the bottom to make sure it is accurate. So Helen, not only should the people who are watching this live fill it out, but their family, friends, anybody in their network, they should share this website.
They should share the website. As many people should comment as possible. And, I don't mind criticism if it's one of those criticisms that says you don't go far enough. You can make things even better by doing this. Or you forgot something. You overlooked this. So I really would appreciate as many people filling this out. We will read every one of these. We listen to the testimony. And so, and it will influence the shape and the strength of our proposals going forward.
Absolutely. So as Helen said, the survey is due this upcoming Tuesday, July 14th, if I'm not mistaken. So this gives you ample amount of time to complete it. And as you noticed, it didn't take that much time. So you won't be sitting in front of your computer for hours, but definitely your comments are what you should take your time on because you want to be heard. And I feel like that's so important. For this video itself, if you're watching it as a replay, you can feel free to share this on your Facebook page. So now your friends and family and colleagues can now hear this and know the importance of the survey and why it's important to be completed.
And I'd like to say something, Amber.
Absolutely.
I talked about the family caregiver proposals, but there are a lot of proposals in that survey where we didn't check the box that have to do with paid caregivers. So if you have family or friends that are either healthcare providers of some sort or are receiving services, it's very important that those people chime in also.
Absolutely. And what's nice about the survey is when you click on that link, there is the proposal in there so you can actually read what it's about. So if you're looking at it and you're like, I'm not really sure what that is, there is there's that link that you can click on. And then right below is the correct website. We did update it. So please make note of this. And we'll also post it in the body of this Facebook message. But Helen, I want to thank you so much. Do you have any final comments besides stressing the importance of that survey?
Well, I have to say, every one of us in our lives really wants to make a difference. And this is one of those differences you can make by taking not a lot of time and in the comfort of your own home and on your own either computer, iPad, or phone or whatever. But what you do speaking out now is really going to impact how things go forward. So I encourage you to make a difference, add your 2 cents, we'll listen.
Absolutely. And as Helen said, it could take minutes and also in the comfort of your own home. So I almost want to say there's no excuse to do it because now I will make sure I will do mine today because I want to be heard because I do have a grandmother who's 93 in a nursing home, but it's more than that. Sometimes it's hard to be heard, and this is probably one of the easiest ways to be heard. So I want to thank you, Helen, so much for being with us today. And as always, below is the link to the survey that you could fill out. It'll take you just a few minutes. We also want to announce that we now have a YouTube channel. So as you're seeing right now, we are streaming live on Facebook, but now if you went to our YouTube channel, which is AARP Wisconsin, you will also be able to see us live there. So this is just another great opportunity. If you have a friend or family member that doesn't have a Facebook account, they can easily watch us in YouTube, which I think is another really great resource. So thank you so much, Helen. Join us next Thursday, where we're going to be talking all about fraud. So right now, especially with COVID, just scams in general, we want to make sure we're watching out for our loved ones. So join us back here next Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Time as I chat with one of my colleagues, Courtney Ann Clam, all about frauds. So please make sure that you invite your friends and your family. And thank you once again so much, Helen, and thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you next Thursday.
Thank you.